Hi, this is Dan Caron with MemberMouse, and I'm very, very excited today to be talking to Jason Glaspie. He's a longtime MemberMouse user, customer, and he's been with us since the early days. Jason is a very, very successful internet marketer. He speaks at conferences. He's sold several companies. He's a very experienced guy, and today I'm happy to be picking his brain about how to build and grow membership sites. So Jason, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about your history, how you got started in internet marketing, and then eventually how you ended up being one of the producers of Paleo Plan?
Yeah, I started in college, really. My degrees were in English and journalism. So I really loved writing. However, it's writing is a tough field to make a living in.
Yeah.
And I found out what I really loved even more than writing was storytelling.
Yeah.
And I had studied advertising, and my big dream was to be in copywriting and work at large ad agencies. And I had a lot of friends that did that. And when I graduated, I had an opportunity to work in some projects, but it's a lot of work. And in advertising, most of it is not sexy work.
Right.
It's a lot of sitting down for 2 hours and writing out 100 headlines or whatever the client wants. And it's like, that's a terrible idea, but you still have to do it.
Yeah.
And so then I started having friends getting into interactive, and this is, 15 years ago. And that was it was so new, it was so interesting. There wasn't, 80 years of experience behind telling people what was the right or the wrong way to do something. And I found that I had a lot more control when I worked on projects like that because, the client really didn't know what was going on, and they really had to trust me. And I loved that. It's always a bummer to me when I work on a project and the client really wanted me to go one direction, and I didn't feel like that was the right direction.
Right.
And then you do it, it doesn't work, but you're still judged for the failure, even if you didn't want to go that way.
Sure.
With interactive, there was a lot less people who had more experience than me, so I got to really rely on my instincts, and it just seemed to work really well. And I did that and managed to work my way up from doing pretty small sites for local businesses to doing a little bit larger. And then I got hired on an agency and had a chance to work on some really large global brands like Burton Snowboards and Starbucks. But I found that even then it was still like, I'm still doing client work. I'm still answering to other people's vision. I'm still building someone else's business. So I started playing around and realizing that I had this entrepreneurial side that I didn't really anticipate growing up or even in college. But once I saw my friends starting their own online businesses, it just seemed to make sense to me to go that route as well. So about 2008 or 2008, we were in South America for a few months. We came back, and the economy had collapsed, and it was kind of one of those, no better time to start your own business than when you can't really get a job. So I've been doing some consulting work on the side and slowly started building Paleo up because I saw the CrossFit was taking off, and all the CrossFit gyms were promoting Paleo as a way of life. And I figured, this is the only diet I've seen really healthy, fit, young people start. It wasn't a fad diet where it was just a bunch of overweight 55-year-old men and women. This was like really healthy, fit athletes who were eating Paleo to get a little bit more advantage and a little bit more performance. I thought that's really uncommon. And if CrossFit is exploding and they're promoting Paleo, I think Paleo is going to be right there in the wake. And at the time, there was just very few resources on the internet that really helped people starting in Paleo. So we created Paleo Plan to just make it simple. So it was meal plans, shopping lists, and recipes delivered to your inbox every week for $10 a month. And at the time, there was very little traffic, very little competition, very little audience, but allowed me to really establish Paleo Plan as an authority early on. And as the paleo movement grew, our site was just really well positioned to grow with it as an authority and as one of the respected sites. And as one of the early companies to kind of value brand and a logo that didn't have like a caveman on it or anything. And so I felt like our product stood out a little bit more than some of the others. And it's just been super fun to watch it grow ever since. And we've, grown the community. We've really worked out some of the kinks and put together products that really do help people eat paleo. So.
Wow, well, that's fantastic. Can you give our listeners some sense of scale to the business? Are we talking tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year or something in that range?
Yeah, it's definitely in the 6 digits a year range. And I think the last time I looked, we were well over 2 million page views a month. So pretty large audience, pretty engaged, and a pretty strong community at our site.
So, for everyone listening, I mean, this is a very successful site. And some of the tips that Jason will share with you are coming from direct experience. This is not a guy who is making things up off the cuff, which I've seen some internet gurus do from time to time. This is a guy who has built and grown this business to be something that is a very substantial scale. So I really implore people to listen carefully to this advice because it's proven. So, Jason, with that said, can you talk to me a little bit about your page views per month? I mean, that's a huge number. Is that natural SEO? Is that from press releases? Is that from Google advertising or some combination of channels? How did you guys grow that number to be so substantial?
Yeah. There's a few different avenues that I think contributed to that type of growth. One, like I mentioned, we started at a time when there weren't very many paleo resources. So it was really easy to find us and then link to us because, there was a site that was probably the number one paleo site at the time, but it was 100% text links. It was like the Craigslist designed site, and it had a tremendous amount of information, but it was really overwhelming, and you really had to work to find the information that you wanted.
Sure.
And coming from interactive and storytelling background, it just seemed like there had to be a better way. Like we can make a list of recipes look enticing. We can add photos. We can give spacing and white space to help break up things and categorize them in smart ways. So we really were one of the, like I said before, we were one of the first paleo sites that had a user-friendly and approachable design. And I think that really connected, early on and just filled a gap of opportunity.
Sure.
And as we grew, we just continued to work on it. We were definitely aware of SEO. When we started off, we were probably 90% paid traffic.
Sure.
But within the past year, that's went to probably 5% paid traffic. We have, I'd say, probably 50% organic Google traffic, and then somewhere in the realm of 40% referral traffic from other sites.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also just a lot of hustle, emailing people, letting them know, like, we've got these sites, we've got these recipes. I know that you're listing. Would you mind including us in your roundup? Trying to find opportunities to work with other people who are doing interesting things in the space, so that we could lift up other people that we thought were really worth paying attention to, and at the same time, we're getting that same benefit from other sites. And just as the site grew, we keep an eye on what are the posts that are doing really well. I think it can be easy to take your eye. There's so many things to focus on, I think, when you're growing a business.
Yep.
But I knew organic traffic was going to be huge for us because I just didn't want to be spending $5,000 to $10,000 a month on paid search all the time.
Sure.
So looking through our Google Analytics, we recognize, like, hey, there's These types of posts are just crushing it. They get a tremendous amount of engagement. There's a lot of comments, a ton of search traffic, and people stay on the site and go to other pages when they've visited that site, when they came in for that. So let's make sure that we're covering those types of posts. And that was everything from like, is quinoa paleo? And that just tends to be a question that our perfect type of audience would ask. Someone who's super knowledgeable about paleo, who really understands it, has their own recipes. Our product isn't really designed for them. So that person who knows a little bit about paleo, who's looking for a little bit more information, who's having to go to the web to search because that's where they're finding information, we're perfectly placed and positioned to help that person.
Right.
So recognizing the type of content that our reader is going to be most interested in, that's going to be solving these little problems, and then showing them like, hey, yes, we write these articles that help explain what paleo is, but we have whole products that really make eating paleo simple. And so part of it was looking through our analytics to find opportunities, but then recognizing even further what types of articles were going to be the best for our audience, and how could we turn those into education that would build trust while also an introduction to our products.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to call out, that you designed articles and blog content that would attract not just any reader, but the reader who could potentially become a customer. And I think knowing how to qualify your audience is one of the most important skills in sales and marketing. So I think that's really important to call out here, because it does no good if you're attracting the wrong type of traffic. I had a site years ago in college where I would get 5,000 visits a day, but I could barely sell anything to this audience because it was a mismatch between the type of traffic I was getting and the product I was selling. So I think that's a really, really important point. Talk to me a little bit about the actual tactical nature of your search engine optimization campaigns. Do you use particular tools like SEMrush or SEO-Moz? Are there particular tools that you found to be kind of best in class?
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who've used Moz and SEOrush and SpyFu and a handful of others. One of the struggles that I had was it's always been harder for me to invest in things that I'm bad at versus going all in on the things that I'm good at.
Yep.
And I think that, there's definitely strategies where, that's the right idea. And there's strategies where, no, you got to buckle down and learn some things. You can't just rest on whatever you have in your pocket.
Sure.
So I was always trying to balance that. And the real deep dives that you're going to get with something like Moz or SEOrush is definitely not the kind of strength that I have. That, to me, has always felt very analytical and precise, and I'm much, like I said before, I'm much more of a storyteller, and my strengths have always been trying to tell a story, to make a connection, to make information easy to find. When I worked at the larger agencies, one of the big things that I was in charge of was user interface, user experience, and information architecture.
Right.
So those were the guiding lights that I always turned to when I was trying to figure out the best way to engage or to draw larger traffic. So I never found those tools to be the ones that really helped me take it to the next level, but that's part of why we started working with some other people last year, because I just recognized I was never going to be as good at certain things as other people. And for me to even take the time to learn wasn't the best use of time, both for the site, for me, or even our customers. So from that perspective, I probably don't have one tool that I always go to. Whenever I get a chance, I'll do a little bit of plugging around and like get some ideas, but it's not where I live every day.
It sounds to me like you briefly look at Google Analytics, maybe some of the keywords that people are searching for. You might look at some AdWords keywords. and you kind of just use that as raw material to generate some blog posts that you find interesting that you think would be relevant. Is that about right?
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of times, I know people who go into those tools looking for what to do next, and they're really open and they know how to deep dive. For me, I tend to go to those tools when I have a problem I need to solve. Like, I know I need to do X, but I need to find out what X is. And then I go in for a very specific reason, like who are our best traffic referrers? Because I want to do a promotion with those guys. Since they're already sending traffic, I want to find out how to send more traffic from them.
Mm-hmm.
So, like going in, realizing like these people have written about us 3 or 4 times, they're linked to us already, they must like us, they must trust us, and they're sending a good chunk of traffic. Well, let's go to them and do something special.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's an example of how I would use analytics or Moz, because versus going in with a open mind, like show me something, I go in more with I need to know this one particular thing and give me that information so I can go follow up on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, tell me a little bit about. Let's switch gears here because I'm really interested in hearing a little bit about the dichotomy between getting somebody to sign up for your newsletter and getting them on a mailing list and getting them to join. I always found that to be an interesting problem, right? Because some people like to direct everyone to an opt-in to capture the email, and then other people, myself included, like to push towards the membership because in a way I find I want to start optimizing for the conversion into a paying member first because I find that is really where I can get the highest leverage in my business. So it seems like you have both paths where somebody can join and subscribe to your newsletter and also can become a member. Can you talk a little bit about that dichotomy, about how you convert somebody from a newsletter subscriber? It doesn't seem like, maybe you don't push it that much. It's kind of here and there throughout the site. It does look like you try to push the membership pretty hard. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. And I think every business is probably going to have a slightly different approach to this. Definitely when you start getting into a higher ticket item, impulse buys just become more and more difficult.
Right.
In our case, most of our products are, they're around $10, so our weekly meal plan is $10. Our ebook is $34. Those, for the most part, tend to be like, I'm looking for information. This looks like a tool to solve it. Let's just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
However, if we had a $100 or $500 product, getting their email address so we can start building value, start demonstrating trust, start building trust and demonstrating value. I think that becomes a little bit more important. You have to showcase that you're going to provide when people do sign up for that larger ticket item. With $10, it seems like it's not that big of a risk, and there's a 14-day free trial. So let's just get you into the membership funnel.
Right.
However, I think we've also tried to be a little bit purposeful. There's the page that you're on and how you got there can kind of play a role in that as well. And at the moment, we're not actually doing the best job with that at Paleo Plan, but I have another project I'm working on, and one of the things we're doing there is really trying to be much more granular about the type of content and the type of offer that we're showing.
Sure.
So an example here would be if you come into the site through Google straight to a recipe page, which is definitely going to be a large percent of our audience.
Sure.
Those people they're not looking for a service, they're not looking for a solution. They're just looking for a meal to cook tonight.
Right.
So shifting their attention away from a meal to cook tonight and into a purchase funnel is actually a larger step. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the recipes are a great time to just say, hey, sign up for a newsletter. You're going to get recipes sent to your email. We make Paleo easy. Just keep us in your back of mind. If you come to the homepage because someone has said, hey, check out Paleo Plan, it makes eating paleo easier, then the homepage is really talking about the solutions we provide. We have these tools, we have meal plans, we have fitness, we have ebooks. And I feel like if you've come to our homepage, that's a better time to start selling on the product.
Yeah.
But with one of the projects I'm working on, we're actually going even further and being like, what does this blog post talk about? And what kinds of solutions are people looking for when they come? And if we're getting 100 people to this blog post, what percentage of them are ready to just buy now? What percentage of them need their hand held and to have that value and trust built?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I stay with WordPress, which at this point is so ubiquitous. You can even just choose to show different ads based on category. It's not that hard to create, just different template tags in WordPress that will swap out the banner that you are listing by category.
Mm-hmm.
Or to use a pop-up mobile window that offers people a discount or an email sign-up. You can do that on a pretty granular level based on the page or the post or the category, where they came from. And so that's some of the stuff that we haven't explored as much with Paleo Plan specifically, but I think is probably one of our next steps is to really get a nice audit of all of our current content and make sure that we're funneling people into the right path based on where they came from and what they're looking at.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's a very thoughtful approach. And one of the things that I'm noticing here, your Paleo Plan solutions, this call out box here I think is really, really brilliant, because you have your call to action, sign up, and then you have your kind of 300 by 250 rectangle here, which looks great. But then you have these weekly meal plan, the Paleo ebooks, and the workouts, and I see that they're all linked really to the checkout funnel. But I bet if I had to bet, if I was a betting man, I'd put money that these get the most clicks over the banner, and probably drive a lot of traffic into your conversion funnel.
Yeah, I think you're right. One of the problems we've had over and over is just how do we tell our story? And obviously, like I mentioned, that's something that I'm really keyed in on. But I think it's really easy to ignore. People come to your site and you have to do so much to tell them who you are, what you offer, that you're trustworthy. How do you do that quickly? How do you do that without being complicated or overwhelming people?
Yep.
And while that little graphic, I've seen more handsome graphics, I'd say. I feel like it does a good job of giving people a real world idea of what they're going to get and makes it really simple to showcase. We have, 3 basic solutions. That makes sense. And if I'm looking for a solution for eating paleo, that it's making a promise right away that I can either accept or deny.
Right.
And so for the people who are looking for that, it's really like, I guess I should probably read, and I should if I've already decided the Paleo Plan is trustworthy, well, let's go ahead and go further from here.
Right. That's that makes a lot of sense. I've also noticed here, you talk about telling your story and letting people know who you are. I find that I guess maybe the older I get, the more I see the need to do that. And to really build that credibility and tell that story and build that trust. I mean, you really do a great job here of outlining the team and who's behind Paleo Plan, and with the photos and the family photos and the action shots. It really makes you feel like this website has a human feel to it, and there are real people behind this that practice what they preach. I think a lot of diet plan websites, I think a lot of them are created to make a quick buck, but clearly this is a team of people that really believes in this approach, and you can see that here, and I think that you guys have done a great job at that.
Yeah, you're totally right. We definitely wanted to stand out early, that we are people, that we aren't just some person who found out about the trend and is trying to capitalize. I mean, obviously we're a business. We are trying to capitalize on the opportunity,
Sure.
but letting you know that there's people here. All of our blog posts have always been very much focused on the I, who we are, our story, our path. And part of that is because it's really difficult to come up with a one size fits all for anybody. And so we need to be very careful that these are things that work for us. We can't say this will work for you because we don't know you. However, we can show you the large goalposts, the science to follow along. But knowing who we are, knowing where we come from, knowing our backgrounds definitely helps people understand. When you find out that one person has a really, really bad dairy sensitivity, well, then you're going to understand a little bit why they're always really, really hardcore against dairy. And then when you find out someone who's maybe had some different ailments or sicknesses, you understand why their writing and their focus on paleo has been around these aspects of it, and that they might be more lax in other ways. As well as we've just found that people like stories. I heard that there's a guy who's talking about writing books, and he writes a lot of nonfiction books. And he was saying that in every chapter, it's so important for him to include a personal story that demonstrates whatever he's talking about. And I heard that, and I was like, I'm an English major. I've been doing this for a long time. I've read a lot of books. I've written a couple, and I've heard people talk. But I never just heard someone make it so straightforward. It's like, people connect with the story. And if even if it's nonfiction, if it's a how-to business book, it will make those points so much more memorable. It will make learning about it so much more memorable. And it will be so much more impactful because it'll go through to another level of our subconscious because we process it different when there's a story involved.
Right.
And so, I think it's really important for us to tell our story so that our audience has context and trust, and also just feels like they're part of a community. It's really hard to to build a community when you are kind of faceless.
Right. So, okay, let's switch gears a little bit and talk to me about your implementation of MemberMouse. Is it fairly straightforward, or are you doing anything interesting with smart tags, or are you using lifetime value reporting? I'm just curious to know a little bit about how you use MemberMouse and how that's kind of helped you execute and grow this business.
Yeah, lifetime value reporting is huge for us. Obviously, it's very, very difficult to truly understand what's going on with your members and what your real revenue is per person.
Yep.
We're a small team. We don't have a dedicated programmer who's just 100% of the time tinkering on things like that.
Sure.
I wish we did. But it was very, very difficult. For years, I really struggled with knowing exactly how much each customer is worth, and to allow that to focus or to then educate our pay-per-click spends.
Yep.
If you know that, we make $50 every time someone signs up, on average, well, then you can have confidence spending $30, $35 per person. If you know that every single person who signs up is only sticking around for a month, well, then you better not be spending more than a single month's membership.
Right.
And obviously, there's a long list of intangibles that can contribute to that and tweak it, but it's really helped us know what our pay-per-click spend can be, and it's helped us have more confidence in doing things like price testing. Again, if you don't really have a clear understanding of how long each person is staying and what their value is, it's difficult to change your prices. If you raise your prices and don't necessarily see a drop in signups, it's easy to think, we raised our prices, signups didn't go down, we're making more money now. But it might actually turn out to be that, hey, you signed up, but now that it's $20 or $25 a month, you're actually a little bit more concerned. You get a little more anxious, and you're more likely to cancel as soon as you're not using that product.
Mm-hmm.
Or you might ask for a refund if you forgot to cancel and it renewed before you were ready. At $10 a month, you might have people who are like, that's a bummer, no big deal, I'll cancel next month. Or, I use it enough, I'm not going to ask for a refund, I'll just cancel today.
Sure.
Or I get a little bit of value, I'm going to go ahead and just stay a member. Even though I'm not using the membership exactly how it's designed, I still like being part of the community, and that's worth $10 a month.
Mm-hmm.
But you change that price, and all of that psychology changes with it. And if you're not tracking, it's really easy to be like, well, our signups didn't go down, but our churn was dramatically different.
Right.
So again, lifetime, some of the reporting that we get from MemberMouse just really gives us the capacity to understand those things better, because we don't have someone who can just program and like dive into the Stripe API and really pull out all this data to tell us. We don't have those tools. So
Right.
MemberMouse being able to provide that has been really, really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it took one of our chief architects, Ben. It took him over a year to really implement that reporting suite. So there was a lot of work that went into it in order to get those numbers out, because lifetime value is a very slippery number. So
yeah, it really is.
I brought it up kind of knowing that a site of this size and that's this successful, that you guys are using the advanced reporting tools from MemberMouse, but I had to bring it up because it's such an important part of growing a business and growing a membership site, having that lifetime customer value, by different membership level, and really seeing how much is this customer worth to me? How much can I go spend, on pay-per-click on Google and things like that? Because it's invaluable. It's certainly invaluable to us at MemberMouse, considering we spend a lot of money on Google AdWords. So let's shift gears again. Let's talk about your other project. I don't really know too much about it, but it seems like quite an interesting project. I believe you said you were going to use MemberMouse as well for this project. Can you give me some background on this and what your goals are and what's exciting about this?
Yeah, this is a community site that was started, I believe in 2007 or 2008, so it's been around for quite a while. And it was started by a woman named Janine, who was a fashion blogger and just felt that she was really missing the community aspect of connecting with other bloggers who are writing about similar things. And, excuse me. So she started this as a way to just connect with those bloggers and to provide value. And she ran it beautifully for a number of years. But like most things, at a certain point, I think that she was ready to try something a little different. And this was definitely a large enough project that it prevented that. So a friend of mine has been working with her for a while, and the opportunity came up for him to take over the management of it. He's involved in fashion, and he has a project that is very similar, very complementary with this. But he didn't necessarily have the experience to continue building that community and to growing it and to providing educational value and whatnot. And so he approached me to see if I would want to partner with him, knowing that between the two of us, we had a lot of experience in things like this. But I never anticipated being either in being a diet person, let alone in the fashion world. But
sure,
in the end, it still just comes down to building a community is building a community, helping people to connect with other people who are in a similar life path. There's a lot of carryover there. Whether it's again finding a certain diet that works for you, or doing something that you're passionate about and finding support through your peers. So that's really what my opportunity has been here, is to come in and to just breathe life into the community with a new perspective and a new excitement. And as such, one of the things that we're doing is we're building out a product called IFB Pro. it's the Independent Fashion Bloggers Network, so it's IFB is our name.
Mm-hmm.
And we're creating a paid membership that's going to be IFB Pro, and that's going to help people with some very specific types of help. We get a lot of opportunity to work with brands, and so being able to work with our pro members a little bit more intimately on some campaigns is an opportunity. There's a tremendous amount of education that our readers have told us that they're hungry for, and we have some of that built out already from just buckling down, as well as recognizing like, we didn't realize that there was a lot of interest in learning how to do this. Well, let's bring in an expert and provide some tutorials on how to do that.
Sure.
And you can do that when it's a paid membership. We're a really small team of mostly, non-full-time people. We're building this back up, and so it's really exciting to see what we can do. And obviously, whenever you take over a community or come in and help support a community, there's so much education we have to do. We really want to make sure that we are fully understanding our audience, fully understanding, their desires, their interests, what they're after, why they're blogging, and how we can support that while connect them as well. So it's been a really fun past couple of months, just I guess about 6 weeks, learning from them, having conversations with bloggers, learning more about what fashion blogging is to different people. I thought I had a very specific idea of what it was, but start talking with all these different women and men, and it's a lot bigger than I thought. So it's pretty fun to dive into something like this that's already existing. I've never jumped into an existing product before. I've always bootstrapped my own from the ground up.
Yeah.
So it's kind of neat to have this really passionate, dedicated community that's really hungry, and we can provide a ton of value in a new way that was maybe missing before.
Yeah. No, that's this is a great project. It's interesting that you have so much to bring to the table. I'm wondering if you can give some general advice to people looking to build or grow a membership site. You've bootstrapped several businesses. I believe you'll be able to make this IFB Pro membership a success. Clearly, Paleo plan was a huge runaway success. Are there any principles that you can distill down for our listeners about how they should prioritize their time and their efforts when building a membership site?
Yeah. One of the philosophies that I've used for a while, especially with Paleo Plan, there's always so much to do. I look at both of these sites, and I could write a page each on the homepage of things that we should change or fix or try or test. And I can do that for every single page. I can do that for every funnel. There's 1,000 things to me that are broken.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think is really important, though, is to not, A, be overwhelmed by the things that you think can be improved, and B, not to get too focused on how you fix them. The paradigm that I've always used is find the lowest performing aspects of your business and improve them so that they're in the middle. Mm-hmm. Because if you spend the time to improve them till they're perfect, you'll spend 80% more time, and it'll be a small increment of improvement. And so, but if you only are focused on taking the lowest performing and making it the middle performing area, you'll get there really quickly. And then just leave it and go back to the next lowest performing. And you find that, like, I visualize like lots of little pins in a board, and I'm just picking the ones off the bottom and I'm putting them into the middle. And as I do that, the middle rises and the bottom rises, and after a while, like the value, the success, the ergonomic or the elegance of everything just increases.
Right.
But not tearing out the whole site and doing a whole site redesign all at once. Most of the time isn't the way to do it. We actually did that with IFB, but it was a site that hadn't been, the design was still, I think, like 5 years old. So it was ready, like there wasn't a lot to keep. But with Paleo Plan, we've been iterating on a page by page and a section by section area for the past couple of years, because in general we have a good foundation. But what we're looking at right now, this little feature banner at the top, it performs and it's actually doing fine. It can absolutely be better, but it's not the lowest performing part of our site. It's not what's costing us the most revenue or the most customers or the most traffic. That's actually something else. So let's go work on that instead and not get distracted by the small little things that can bug us. Something else is I'm one guy, so I've always worked with a team of either contractors or employees or friends or whatever to help with the pieces that I'm bad at. And my philosophy has always been, when I ask a professional to do something, I let them be the professional. So again, I'm just picking on this homepage because I'm looking at it. I had a professional designer working with me, and he did this. And when I look at it, it's not my favorite feature banner of any homepage, but it works. The core tenets are the easiest way to start living paleo. That is the message that is really hard to miss.
Yep.
And the call to action's right there, an explanation of what the value is and some details on what our membership is. It's all there. It's all easy to read. It all works.
Yep.
And I looked at it and I'm like, I could spend 20, 40, 80 hours tweaking this, working with him, changing colors, moving things around. But in the end, I just said, you know what? It works.
Yep.
Let's not waste budget and time and energy fixing something that's not broken. Let's go fix all the long list of shit that's broken.
Right.
It allows you to just have permission to just hey, you can't make everything perfect, especially when you're small and you're starting out. You have to just keep moving forward and don't focus on the things that are working. Focus on the things that aren't working. Eventually, this feature will be the lowest performing part of the site, and that's when we'll redo it.
So when you say, there's a few interesting things I want to pull out here. When you say focus on the things that are not working, what's the width or the breadth of that concept in your mind? Are you going? Are you thinking about the business as a whole? Meaning, I need to hire other contractors to build a certain aspect of your site? Are you thinking, our AdWords campaign is broken, or we're not getting enough PR? Or are you really thinking in terms of the site itself and kind of the pages and the buttons? How do you define that scope when you're talking about taking these lowest performing pins and moving them up to the middle of the board?
Sometimes, or I don't think that I consciously choose a scope to think about. For example, with IFB, we're looking at it and we're like, wow, we have this huge opportunity. We have this huge demand for some really high level content and training and opportunity. That to me says paid membership. Mm-hmm. So that is our lowest pin right now. That's our largest missed opportunity.
Yep.
And that's a really large scope to take on a paid membership.
Yep.
And so what you do though is you say, okay, but all this other stuff, I'm not going to put my focus on. Yes, I'll put a little bit of time every day to make sure we're doing our social right and we're maximizing our ads and whatnot. But for the most part, all of my attention is focused on building out this pro membership. Mm-hmm. Let's say that's done and we launch and we feel really good about it. Then I might go back and just be like, what's really missing? And I would look at all the different pieces. Should we be doing paid traffic on this? Should we be doing this? What's our social strategy? And I just kind of look for this part that just screams out missing the boat, lost opportunity. We need to focus. And again, it could be something as simple as a blog post template. I just don't like it and it's just bugging me and I can't get away from it. And I think that it's going to be bugging other people and it's not telling the story I want to tell. So we just dive into a template and change just the way we show content.
Yep.
And then the next one was you know what? Our email messaging is just terrible. Let's redo how we think about when and why and what we communicate with our members through email. And just totally deconstruct that, think about what really needs to be done, what are we doing that's right, what are we doing that's broken, and then implement a fix. And it's a fix that takes it to nice, solid, middle of the road performance. And so it could be something very, very micro, and it could be something very macro, and it really just depends on what my instincts are telling me.
Yeah, no, that's great. Let me ask you this. This is a tough question. I've been a copywriter for a very long time, and writing is one of my passions, and also something that I abhor because it can be very difficult. What advice would you give people in terms of copywriting? How do you write a good headline? How do you know that you're speaking to things that are important and relevant to people? And further, I guess I would add on a second question, which is, how do you know that you're selling a product worth selling? I mean, clearly you're going into this IFB Pro paid membership with the premise or the hypothesis that there's going to be a certain segment of fashion bloggers that will pay you for premium content about how to become a commercial fashion blogger. So there's a premise there, and then there's also connecting with that audience and writing good copy that's relevant to them. How do you kind of think about being on the mark and hitting the target when it comes to copywriting and the actual product offer itself?
Yeah. The easy answer to one of those questions is we asked our audience. We sent out a questionnaire saying, we're considering building this. Are you interested? And if they clicked yes, then we had a short questionnaire. What are the problems that you're facing as a blogger? What are the ways that you'd like to see that resolved? What would you most be excited about learning? And try to not lead with or be leading with questions, and instead ask a really broad range of questions with a lot of different approaches and styles to let people find the explanation that matched their needs. And it was really, the response was really direct. People were hungry for this. They were willing to pay for it. And they were consistently saying the same thing about what they needed. That's a sense of connection, education, to know how to do it better and to do it professionally, to have the confidence that they're doing it right, to be connected with the community so that they can all grow together. And then to be introduced to opportunities that they might not have gotten otherwise, because we have a large audience of influencers. We get a tremendous amount of people coming to us directly.
Yeah.
So this allowed us to, those questions, I was very surprised with how much continuity there was across the board.
Yeah.
So that was a fairly easy piece. Now, sometimes you don't have a huge audience you can poll. In this case, we were fortunate.
Right.
In terms of copywriting, there's a couple of things that I try and always remember. It's so easy to just write a headline. It's so easy to just me and Kim, my producer, we had a little bet. We had to send out an email to our audience, and so we A/B tested the headline, and we had a bet who could write the best headline that got the most opens. And it was such a good exercise because it made you stop for just a second and not just fill the field with something that worked.
Yep.
And I took literally 25 seconds to just think, okay, how would I feel if I saw that in my inbox? Would that make me want to click? And I don't want to be, BuzzFeed, clickbait spammy with my titles, you'll never believe what these people saw.
Right.
But at the same time, can I actually be a person? Can I have a personality? Can I make a promise that is actually going to be filled when you read the article and or open the email? Can I engage with the needs and emotions of my audience? Can I have empathy for who they are and where they're at and what they're looking for? And can I just quickly combine that and write something that works there?
Yep.
And like I said, I didn't spend 45 minutes. I didn't write 500 versions. I just thought about it really purposefully for half a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to say that I won. But really, Kim's and mine were both very good compared to the one I was writing when I was just drafting up the email. I just threw up a bullet point at the top that said subject, and I just threw something in as a placeholder.
Sure.
In a previous life, I would have just used that because it worked. But I spent just a fraction of the time being purposeful, and suddenly it worked better.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic advice.
I have one other piece of advice that I actually am really proud of.
Okay, let's hear it.
Whenever we're writing a blog post about something, or I've also I run a publishing company, and we write a lot of books around technology and the business of technology.
Mm-hmm.
And what I tell our writers is, when you're explaining something, explain it like you're sending an email to a very good friend that really needs this information, and you have it. I have this really good buddy. He's in LA. He's a wonderful advertising executive, super smart guy, but he's really dumb with certain pieces of technology.
Sure.
And when he asks for help, like, he only asks because he needs to know this. And like, how do I do this? And I'll write these like amazing emails. And I don't mean to. I just start writing, and I care about my friend so much. I want him to be successful. I have the knowledge in me. Right. It's innate. And so I write with this like tension and passion. Like, I really want you to understand this. I'm going to write it exactly how you will understand it. It's going to be simple, but not belittling. It's not going to be boring. I'm going to use personality. I'm going to maybe throw in a story. But there's going to be a passion that you get it. And that when you're done reading this, you don't have to look any further.
Yeah.
And when I tell people, like, write like that, write like you're writing to a good friend who needs the information that you have, and it's important.
Yeah.
And that natural passion just comes out. Instead of looking for your voice and, should I try and be funny here? Or you just write because you're talking to a friend, and you know how to do that.
Right. No, that's fantastic.
That's been a really good guiding light for me, and I think my writing has gotten better as a result.
No, I'm sure it has. I guarantee it. Well, Jason, listen, this has been awesome. I think we've delivered a ton of value on this call. Clearly, you're doing a lot of things right. I thank you for being a MemberMouse customer and user, and sharing your tips and tricks with the community. I hope that we stay in touch, and I would recommend everybody to follow Jason Glaspie. He's clearly a very, very bright and successful individual, and will be bringing great things into the world. So thanks again, Jason, and let's stay in touch.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. You're very kind with your intro, but I appreciate it.
I'd also like to thank our listeners. I hope you guys got a lot out of this call. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care, guys.